Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Veritech and AFID for inviting me to this event today. And thank you all for your interest and for attending my keynote speech. I broke down this speech into three different parts. Part one actually was pretty much covered really well, which is my background and what Greener Crop does. In part two, I'd like to share a few lessons that I've learned along the way, and that through my own startup journey, and hopefully those are things that will help you in your journeys as well. And in part three, I'd like to tell you about a few of the opportunities that I see in the market that you can benefit from. So before starting Greener Crop, we covered that I was in charge of scaling and launching the operations of Groupon, Delivery Hero, and Rocket Internet. And I thought that, all those years in tech would have prepared me sufficiently for the process of starting my own company. But it turns out that working for companies that have a very set business model and have very deep pockets is not exactly the same as coming up with your own idea and financing it yourself. So Greener Crop was born from the observation that there was a huge discrepancy in the market between our need for localized food production and the existing technology. If we look at the market and the way it's set up now, the GCC imports $6 billion worth of fruits and vegetables every year. And the response has been that the government pours a couple $100 million into setting up a few mega farms. And if you actually look into these mega farms, especially indoor vertical farms, a lot of them aren't even able of supplying the market with a mass market product. What you'll see is them specializing on leafy greens, microgreens, Boston lettuce, and so on. Things that they need to sell at values of $5 to $6 per kilogram for them to even break even. And that's not really mass market even in the GCC. So we said the technology is available. What are the challenges and what are the reasons why this technology is not being deployed at a more meaningful scale? At a scale where this is available to farmers, this is available to new investors, this is available to businesses. And we realized that there were too many barriers of entry. And those barriers of entry start with the fact that the industry is still currently very, very fragmented. This is a new industry, and that is an opportunity for us, and that is a challenge for people who want to take up the technology. Because what you're going to face you're going to face questions over questions. What technology do I start with? Do I start with aeroponic, hydroponic, aquaponic? Do I start with an indoor vertical farm? Do I do a greenhouse? Do I focus on animal fodder? Once you figure that out, who are the suppliers that make most sense to you? Everyone's going to tell you they are. But how do you get that set up? Who supervises the setup of the farm? Who operates the farm? Who can you sell the produce to? And if you, like most of us, are looking at different opportunities for you to invest your money or to start a business, why go through that path if it's going to be the one that has the most questions that you can't answer? And so essentially that's what Greener Crop does. Greener Crop's unique, and I can say unique because there actually isn't anyone who does anything like it, was created to remove those barriers of entry by providing aspiring farmers with the support from farm design to technology selection all the way to the day-to-day operations. So when clients work with Greener Crop, we generally have boots on the ground operating the farms on their behalf, sourcing all of the supplies, and in some cases we even take the produce to market. So there are three lessons that I learned in this journey that I think are critical and that help people reduce the trial and error that's involved when you set up your own business. So lesson number one is to set priorities for your business model. Funding is a very, very weird game. Some people will say that it's very easy to raise funding. A lot of people will say that it's not. It depends on the sources, it depends on the country, but it's up to you to decide what you want your business to do and how dependent you want to be on those things. So for me personally, my key priority was that I wanted an asset-light business model. An asset-light business model means that I don't own the technology, I don't own the hardware, I don't own large amounts of land. What that means is that I'm a lot more flexible in how I grow the business, how I finance the business, and how much of the business I need to give up in order to raise the funding to grow the business. The second thing I wanted was a cash flow positive business. In the GCC, collecting your money is probably the biggest challenge that most businesses face, and probably the reason why most businesses go out of business. That's not a situation I wanted to put myself in. And so the idea is make it a priority. Build your business plan around that. And if you see a gap in the market but you can't tick those boxes, don't go for it. And the third one is I wanted a business model that could easily expand geographically. And so we achieve this by focusing on a service. So we don't build the farms, we don't manufacture the farming technologies, we go to the experts who have been doing this for decades. So there's no point in us reinventing the wheel. Secondly, we generate sales commissions from the sale of that farm as well as farm management fees up front when we start a project. So that means that I'm always cash flow positive and I can work backwards to say I have 3 months until the next payment, this is how much money I have, what can I afford in the meanwhile? And I can obviously say that my cost of operations will be this, the rest is profit, or it's reinvested into growing the business. But that's a very different approach than praying that at the end of the year you're going to have collected enough money to make that happen. And then thirdly, by raising money up front, now how long does it take to set up a farm? If the client signs a contract to set up a farm now, it's going to take 3 to 6 months until that farm's operational. That gives me 3 to 6 months to find a team to operate his farm or her farm, right? Which means I can take projects on anywhere in the world. If you tell me now that we're setting up a project in Hawaii, I have 3 to 6 months to find people in Hawaii to run that farm, which means that we're extremely flexible and we can go where the demand takes us. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is to validate your business idea. You've now set your priorities, you understand what it is that you want from your business and what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to risk. And one of the most fun thing I've learned in my career is that people love talking about themselves. And clearly I'm here on invitation, came to Lebanon to get the chance to talk about myself. So that's something that's very, very common and that you can take advantage of. So in the beginning when we came up with the business model, we did a high-level P&L to see whether this would make sense. And then we started speaking to people. So I called farm manufacturers and I asked them about their technology. And they would tell me about their technology, but they'd also tell me about how they promote their products. And this is one of the biggest learnings I had in the beginning of this journey, which was how would we acquire customers? Now, my background, when you're in food delivery business and vouchers and so on, it's hammer clients with advertising. It just make them think about nothing else except how they can order a hamburger to you right now. That doesn't work with farming. I'm not going to be able to convince any one of you to now drop $200,000 into a hydroponic farm if you've not at least already thought about it, if you've not already been considering it. So in this case, what we learned was you need to let your clients come to you. When a client comes to the conclusion that this would be an interesting business opportunity for them, let them find you first. Spend your money on being the most findable product. But the approach can't be to keep YouTube ads on here's your farm, please buy now. The other people we talked to were regional agents. So now I'm looking at the technology providers, but who can best validate the market fit? Now, in this part of the world, they don't set up offices here, they don't set up HQs here, they hire a Lebanese regional agent, and that person often represents other brands. So because of that lack of, let's call it loyalty, because they're not exclusive to that one brand, they will be very genuine in their opinion about that technology. And through that, there was a lot that we learned, there was a lot of opportunities and gaps in the market that we discovered. And then thirdly, we spoke to hotels and restaurants to understand what are they looking for when they buy the produce from these farms. And we spoke to VCs to understand how we would need to position our company from the beginning if we wanted to attract funding. All of these things, help me fine-tune the business proposition, but most importantly, it saves a lot of money in trial and error, right? These are the expensive things in your startup in the beginning. It's a small team, you're not burning a ton of cash, but you do make mistakes, and mistakes take time, and time costs money. Lesson number 3 is to take advantage of the reality of remote work. New work, as they're calling it, is very, very different than the previous concept, and that's something that especially here you can take advantage of. So I now had a business model that I was confident in, and I needed a team to support me. And I know so many startups that will start by hiring a CTO, right? And we still haven't hired a CTO, and it's 1.5 years down the line. But the first people we hired were salespeople, because the first thing I need to understand, is there a fit, or is there a demand? Do people want this product? And this was in the middle of COVID. Nobody was doing in-person meetings, so it didn't matter where we would get the salespeople from. Now, I needed Arabic and English speakers, and I could bring them to Dubai or hire them in Dubai, and I'd have to finance the high cost of living in Dubai. Instead, we looked at where are the AgTech experts, and we found a lot of them in Lebanon. We hire a lot of staff from UZEK, for example. And so we found that we would find the tech, we would find the know-how, the expertise, and instead of bringing the cow to us, we go to the cow. Not that my staff are cows. So, based on that, we then looked at, okay, managers who need their team to sit in an office with them are lazy managers. Yeah? The opportunity that you receive from a remote workforce obviously has its set of challenges, but you will learn how to communicate better. You will learn how to utilize data to track your staff's productivity, and you will truly empower your team to make decisions. And if anyone's worked at a startup, empowerment is really important. I can't do anything on my own. I need my team to figure it out. This applies for all the other positions as well, right? If the experts on hydroponics are in the Netherlands and go to top universities in Lebanon and the Netherlands, don't force them to move to Dubai and figure out how to rent a car and get their license converted and so on. Keep them there, let them do their job there. Now, the last part of the presentation is about outlook and opportunities. So Greener Crop's in its second year of operations, and we've launched new farms across the UAE, Qatar, and Oman, and we're hopefully expanding into the US soon. Working in agriculture, I can generally say, has been the most rewarding part of my career. As an industry, it's not as fake, it's not as exaggerated, it's not overhyped, like crypto or food tech or fintech and so on. But one of the most astonishing things to me is the level of opportunities that you see here. And I remember when I started the business, I was invited to a call by an investment and development fund. And they were talking about AgTech, and there was a company talking about how they were raising sheep and they didn't know what to do with the manure. And the manure, everyone was complaining about the manure from that farm. And so he decided to turn it into compost and use it as fertilizer. And like, is that not the most obvious thing? Is that something we have to discuss in 2020? But those opportunities are generally still out there. And there's a lot of people looking to turn over every nook and cranny and find small levers to make a business opportunity. In agriculture, those opportunities are actually significantly bigger. So there's three concepts that I think, sorry, I'm doing everything in threes. There's three concepts that I think are really interesting. Number one, marketplaces. Everyone we see right now is focusing on setting up another e-commerce platform to sell hyper-locally grown food. You're going to be competing against the biggest players in the online groceries space, players that I've worked for before, and I know their funding and I know their marketing budgets. It's a really, really tough game. But there's no one who's looking at consolidating the technologies that's out there. So, whether it's seeds, whether it's fertilizers, pesticides, rock wool, pruning shears, Dutch buckets, growing bags, sand filters, and so on. We work with 20 or 30 different suppliers just to get the growing supplies to operate one farm. And as this industry grows, that's a big opportunity. It's not going to be a billion-dollar business. Let's not kid ourselves. You're not going to achieve unicorn status. But there are companies that right now will become your clients immediately. The second thing is a seed database. Every seed manufacturer sells thousands of varieties, and nobody knows the difference except them. And so here we are trying to figure that out, and we go to the shops, because now I found one in a catalog online, but they don't have it in the local shop. In the local shop, they have ones that are expired, and you can't see the catalog online anymore. This is something that we would pay money for immediately. If this is something that someone wants to develop, we would co-invest right away. We know 50 other farms that would do the same thing. So that's a big opportunity in the market. Once again, it's a very basic opportunity, but it's one that you can realize quickly with no investment. And the third one is actually a fun one, which is honeybee rental or pollination bee rentals. We don't have the environment in the Gulf to keep these bees alive all year round. And so it doesn't make sense for us to own them, but if there was a company like in California, they drive around, they go to the almond fields during the season, and they let their bees out for pollination. The bees come back, they leave, they go to the next farm. Again, easy business model. Those bees are here. They are not in the Gulf. You need to figure out how to get the bees to the Gulf, and then you're making a lot of money. And lastly, I'd want to conclude with that, I hope that sharing this journey, sharing some of our experiences inspires a lot of you, and it helps the others to avoid some of the challenges that we face and that a lot of other startups face. Working with Lebanese talent has been extremely rewarding to us. We found a really smart, dedicated, hardworking, loyal workforce, and I don't think there are people that are more entrepreneurial that I've met than the Lebanese. And so you should all be proud of this, and you should all know that your talents are highly sought after, especially in the Gulf, but also in large parts of the other world. So thank you all very, very much for your time. For those of you who are interested in getting in touch with me, my email is alexander@greenercrop.com. And thank you again for your interest and your participation.